Welcome to Practical Shamanism. I'm Katie Weatherup. I'm a former engineer with 20 years of experience working as a shamanic practitioner, and I hope to help you to connect to your personal power and magic and to support you in living a really good life that just keeps getting better. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to talk to you today about the third chakra. So this is the solar plexus, and if you're not familiar with the chakra system, it's a concept that we get from Eastern traditions, and the most commonly spoken of chakras are the 7 chakras that are the dominant ones in the most common tradition. So they're these wheels of light that spin and help us to interface with all the aspects of being human. So they all have these wonderful, unique functions. And part of what I really enjoy about the map of the 7 chakra system is across the spectrum of all these chakras, they speak to all the aspects that are relevant to the human experience. And when we're having a problem or an issue, we can often track it to the chakra that's out of balance, do a little work with the chakra, and see the symptom or the issue become better. So sometimes this is a physical kind of thing, like you can look to the chakra in that part of the body, but it also seems to hold true for a lot of mental and emotional problems, as well as circumstantial problems. So for example, if someone doesn't have a strong balanced root chakra and sacral chakra, it's been my experience that their ability to be in right relationship with money and have money work out really well for them is significantly impaired. So every bit of effort that they're putting in on other levels, they're just going to have to work a lot harder for the same results as someone who has those healthy lower chakras and is trying to navigate money. So there's a lot of opportunity when we get these chakras balanced and in right alignment. And I want to talk about one of the chakras that I think is most understood and perhaps even vilified and also overused in modern first world countries. So in terms of the solar plexus, it gets a little bit of a bad rap because people associate it with it being the seat of the ego. And there's what may be a bad mistranslation, I'm not really sure, this idea that you need to overcome or squish the ego. And what I imagine may have been more true when they were originally writing in Sanskrit about these kind of things is they were just saying like, the ego needs a little adult supervision. Don't let it run the show. Don't let it dominate all these other magnificent chakra experiences. Now, if you're on a monastic path, so you have joined a monastery or an ashram and you're living a spiritual life, you may indeed shift the functioning of this chakra to have it take a backseat in the pursuit of being able to connect more strongly through the upper chakras. But for walking around in the world, if you're not in retreat in religious life, but you're trying to function as a human who is fully engaged with the world, we really need all of our chakras working equally well. Like there's no chakra that we do very well without having engaged in the world. And so my approach to working with the chakras is all about let's have them all playing for the same team and working really well. And this chakra needs a little nuanced facilitation because it's the seat of our thinking mind. And sometimes we think of like, oh no, the third eye is the prefrontal cortex, but actually it's associated with this chakra. Different parts of the mind correspond to different chakras. So like the instinct center corresponds to the sacral chakra. So for this, the stream of consciousness is the third chakra. And it's marvelously useful, so useful for so much we do, but it can also be the place that generates so much misery and angst and stress and cortisol and adrenaline and anxiety and shame and self-doubt and reactivity and all these really stressful things. And so I want to give you a couple of other kinds of wisdom to supplement. So if you really recognize some of this in yourself as I talk about this chakra, some of the good things to give your mind to chew on are Brené Brown's work, because she talks about perfectionism. Perfectionism, massive sign that the third chakra is out of balance. The solar plexus has decided that it needs to run the show, and it is not doing well if you're experiencing perfectionism. Also, shame is another really big example of the chakra is out of whack. That can be the second and the third chakra together. So the instincts fire, and then the thinking mind interprets your stress and being ill at ease as there being something that you're going to solve by cataloging the things that are wrong with you. So sometimes there are multiple chakras involved, but Brene Brown is really helpful for that, and also Byron Katie, because when our solar plexus is a happy chakra, when it's in balance, we get the most out of our cognitive ability. We're capable of flexible thinking. We're capable of being resourceful. We're capable of seeing options. We have deep self-trust in our decision making and our process, our ability to take in information and make good choices for ourselves. We have our resourcefulness and our ability to think creatively. We also move through the world with this magnificent clarity about what works for us and what doesn't. We have really good discernment about being able to look at situations and say, yeah, I could totally thrive in that. That would be a great thing for me to engage with, and see those warning flags a mile away in a really accurate way and say, what I know about myself is I'm energetically sensitive, so the middle of the mosh pit probably wouldn't be a good place to put Katie. It would not go well. I wouldn't enjoy that. And so without making the mosh pit bad or wrong or awful or anything else, I can just have this really clear discernment and maybe watch it from afar and celebrate the joy and the aliveness and the engagement of the people for whom the mosh pit really is a good match, and stand back and create an experience that's more conducive. So it's a really good compass for what works for us and what doesn't. Unfortunately, when it gets out of whack, that's when we get perfectionism, hyper self-criticism, the mind racing on the hamster wheel, recapitulation of everything we've ever done wrong, every time we were ever socially awkward, insecurity, not feeling like people like us or care about us. We end up implementing social strategies that push people away. So if you see somebody who wants to start a conversation with a lot of name dropping and making sure you know that they're a really big deal, and like, oh, your solar plexus is getting a little out of hand. And the trouble with this chakra is when it feels out of balance, it's convinced that it is solely heroically responsible for fixing everything that's wrong and saving you. So this chakra stops encouraging you to listen to body wisdom, like you don't know what you're doing with your breath when the chakra is really activated and unhappy. You'll never notice that your breath has gotten shallow or there's tension in your body. You won't be able to hear the wisdom of your spirit and your soul. So we all have an inner wise person, our deep soul wisdom. And if we get really quiet, you've probably had an experience where you're like, wow, I was just quiet and peaceful and sitting with a question, and this really great wisdom and knowing bubbled to the surface. All of our intuition is a subtle voice, and so being able to hear clearly and intuitively is a really profound thing that we get cut off from. And this chakra is really loud when it's not happy. It gets really, really, really loud, so it drowns everything else out. The person with this chakra who's unhappy is also taking offense where none is intended. So everything is interpreted through well, what are you thinking about me? Do you like me now? It's so on and so forth. The chakra is when it's inflamed, is not very good at flexible thinking. So as I record this, we're in the middle of the COVID experience, and one of the things I'm witnessing is we really don't have ground under us. And Pema Chodron, magnificent practitioner, talks about ground as this idea of certainty. We don't know how things are going to work out. There have been changes in how we go to the grocery store, how we get food, or how we manage money, or how we move around the world. And I'm watching people vigorously speculating on what's going to happen next, when the truth of it is there are just way too many variables and way too many data points to know what life is going to look like in a month or 6 months. But there are a lot of people coming up with terrible scenarios and arguing for them vigorously because it's more comfortable to imagine that we will be dealing with something awful, because then the chakra can get to work on preparing how it's going to navigate if we never are able to travel again and all these businesses go out of business and we have another Great Depression. They're making up these really scary scenarios. And the thing about that worst case thinking is we assume when we're facing an unknown that the outcome's going to be the worst thing we can imagine, A, and B, we'll have the same or less resources as we have now to solve it. And if you go back through tough times in your life that you survived, what you may discover looking at the data points is, oh, it turned out that there were amazing resources I had no idea that showed up in a really perfect, elegant way to support me. Or all the things, if you were keeping a journal of all your fears about outcomes, a lot of the time the worst thing didn't happen. Like if Murphy's Law really worked all the time, we'd all be dead. Like we would have been wiped off the planet. And so there's this part where the chakra wants to have a plan so badly that it just goes really, really activated when we're facing the unknown. And that's where the adult supervision comes in, much like a child who's really agitated with the unknown, saying, yeah, I know it's scary to go to your first day of kindergarten, and we'll go look around and we'll do everything we can to prepare, and we'll talk about what it'll be like, and, we're going to try to help you get a good night's sleep. And then, you're just being really kind to the child because you know that it is scary to go into something that's unknown, that you can't picture. Silly example, but I have someone in the neighborhood who sells farm fresh eggs, the eggs from her chickens, which is wonderful. And I went, but I had a picture in my mind of her house with this long driveway that would take me up into the hills. And it wasn't. It was just this little short driveway. It was super close. It was really easy. But I know the next time I go buy eggs from her, the amount of energy it's going to take to do that, and it's a simple enough task, is going to be less because my mind already knows the route to drive there, which house it is, how to get the thing, how to give her the money. Like all of that is all in the file now. So easy peasy, no big deal. So when we're sitting with the unknown, the chakra can get really inflamed and activated and unhappy. And that's where, for me, one of the signs of that is I get really control-y pants, very type A. Everything has to be perfect. And I start stressing enormously about things that don't matter. I led some groups on international tour, and there's a whole lot you can't control. There's roadways and obstacles, and where's the food, and what do you expect? It's sort of a constant needing to just be with what is and decide in the moment. And my solar plexus did not like that at all. So I missed some of the joy of some really beautiful places because my head was trying to strategize what would come next because I felt accountable for these group of people. And that's what's really hard about being sort of the type A, controlling, designated adult, is you're the stress ball and you end up not even getting credit for it. People aren't like, oh, that's so wonderful. They're annoyed with you because you've been stressed and annoyed and controlling their every choice. So if you feel like it's a huge deal how the dishwasher gets loaded, even if two different ways will both achieve properly clean dishes, this chakra may be spinning out a little bit. It may be creating tension about things having to be just so, or something terrible is going to happen. Again, that's probably the second chakra, the seat of the instincts, hanging out with the third chakra. The instincts are turned on, and then this chakra comes in service to the instincts and tries to control absolutely everything to make things go well. And it's these times where we, under that influence, we can get really wildly misguided ideas about our self-esteem. So we can either be grandiose or we can feel like nothing. And there isn't this shared humanity. This is a very individual chakra. So there isn't like, yeah, we're all in this together. Everybody's socially awkward at times. Everybody has a story to tell. I can have discernment about the people I want to connect with. I don't have to talk to everybody. I'm an introvert, but we can enjoy this flow. And so I want to give you some tricks and suggestions to help coax this chakra into chillaxing a little bit, because when it remembers that it's part of a team, when it remembers it's part of a whole, it relaxes. So you could think of the chakra and the thinking mind a little bit like a dog that is a working dog traditionally that is in the family just to be a pet. And there can be a lot of obnoxious behaviors that happen because the dog thinks it has a job to do. And if you don't give it a job or get it enough exercise, it's going to make up a job. So relentlessly running laps in the house, patrolling every window. the dog's under a lot of stress, feeling like it has to protect the house. And if you live on a city block where there are bikers going by and there's kids running and playing and there's the mail truck and there's all this stuff, the dog's just going to be so wound all the time. And the people probably aren't going to enjoy it barking its head off all the time. And it's this very not harmonious kind of thing. And so when the solar plexus feels like it has to take over and it has to figure everything out using only the mind, you're going to come out of balance in a way that's very stressful and just not fun. Like, people don't like me when I turn into type A control-y pants Katie. They do not enjoy me, but I enjoy myself so much less because I'm on the inside of it. I only say like 3% of all the crazy that's in my head where I'm trying to make things happen to the other people, and that's enough that they don't enjoy it. So it's lovely to provide this chakra with adult supervision and help it relax and chill. This is another thing that I'm really seeing with COVID is this is the chakra that can be discernment. This is for me, this isn't for me. But when it's out of balance, it turns into judgment. It turns into ugly, right, wrong, good, bad, false dichotomy, which is that believing there are only two options when really there could be like 20 different possibilities, telling you that people's way of being in the world is invalid. And there's a lot of really crunchy stress with this because we've gotten into a society that's pretty politically polarized, at least in the United States, and a lot of vitriol about people thinking differently about big, complicated political issues. And now it's supercharged about whether you think it's a good idea to wear a mask or not wear a mask. And there's a lot of factors into how masks work and what they do. Like, if you're really like looking, there are long articles you can read that talk about the good things they do and the challenges they create and what the balance is. But people who are really triggered with this have created these new lines of division around being furious with people who aren't wearing masks or really mad at the people who are really pro-mask. And so there's all this divisiveness about this ideology difference, not even what people actually do, but just how dare you even think about it differently. And that's an example of something that is the solar plexus, the thinking mind looking at that in non-stress state would be, wow, what a complicated problem we have to solve with this COVID thing. There's so many factors to balance. And the stressed mind going into the false dichotomy of everybody just needs to stay home and wear a mask, or these people are ridiculously overreacting. It simplifies this super complicated, involved, elaborate thing into something really simple. So what I would offer is that one of the ways to work with this chakra when it starts to get too loud is anything you can do to drop your adrenaline levels is helpful. So whatever your go-to stress reduction techniques are, huge fan. I have another podcast on working with anxiety with shamanism. Lots and lots of ways to work with this. It's a chronic human problem, so we have tons of collective wisdom for how to drop your stress levels. There's so much to work with, but you need to remember to actually do those things. And then so much of what gets obstreperous and awful and difficult and mean about the chakra, whether it's self-meanness or meanness toward other people and your thinking, and turns your mind into a bad neighborhood, is driven by adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your system. So if you reduce those levels and put yourself into thrive state, a lot of what's difficult about this chakra evaporates, and it can go back to being this magnificent golden light with a compass that helps you navigate the world in a way that's super aligned for you. So that's the first tip. The second thing to consider is that we're in a society that is so biased toward mental thinking. So if you were to say to someone, I think I'm going to go sit down and do some therapy and read some self-help books because I just feel like there's a better version of myself. They're like, well, what's wrong? Oh, nothing's wrong. I'm getting along with my partner fine. I don't have any really severe addictions, but, I notice I have a few numbing strategies and maybe I'd like to be sleeping a little better and my self-talk isn't as nice. I just feel like I'm not being as effective. So I'm going to invest some money and some time in personal growth. you'd be like, wow, that sounds pretty weird. I'm personally huge fan of that, totally devoted to continuing to be in not a healing process so much, because I don't feel less than healed, but a self-inquiry process so I can keep being more elegant and joyful and happy in my life. So it's this iteration of being in research and development of how do I create this life that I really love. And that's an invitation I would love to make to you. But normal response to that statement might be a lot of like, I don't know what's wrong with this person. Whereas if you were to say, I think I want to go get my MBA, people would be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, career goals totally make sense. We teach algebra to pretty much every student who's cognitively within a certain bounds in the United States, but we don't teach emotional intelligence. We don't teach mind-body connection. They're these really important things. Mindfulness isn't something we teach. So when you look at the educational system, you can see this incredible bias toward language and words. We have this massive appreciation for Shakespeare, who does have magnificent words, but maybe less investment in like Cirque du Soleil, which is this language of music and dance, which goes back to our really primal roots of expression, of storytelling through movement and song and dance. It's really, really a cool thing. And so one of the ways you can kind of offset the chakra thinking that it's its job to run the show, like the dog who feels like it has to protect everybody from everything that happens on the street, is prioritizing engagement of other aspects. So we really have these 4 aspects. We have the mental body, we have the emotional body, we have the physical body, and we have the energetic body. And if we tend to all these aspects in a really balanced way, we're on track for thriving in magnificent ways. But most people are 80 to 90% mental body, and so our society reinforces and teaches us to prioritize engagement with the mind and deprioritize the feeling of the sun on our face, or the feeling of the wind, or the beauty of the sunset, or the magnificence of the tree. And you can watch a toddler with a parent that needs to walk the child to the car to make an appointment and see this tension, because the toddler hasn't yet been trained that the beauty and the magnificence of dirt is as cool as mom's agenda that they get their rear end into the car seat right now. They haven't learned to prioritize accomplishing and doing and linearity and achievement and all of those kind of things over what all these other senses are telling them. And so the invitation is to feed those other parts of you. Tune into your senses. Be present with your emotionality. Be present with your deep soul wisdom. Find places to get quiet in yourself, to hear what your soul is trying to tell you proactively. And talk to that chakra and just, like, all is well, you're okay. So when it gets loud, start by calming the instincts down, stop by dropping the stress levels, and then give yourself some time to pay attention to something that isn't frontal cortex cognition based. Move that mind into being the witness of the experience of some other part of yourself. And that's a really powerful way to counterbalance living in a society that is so biased toward engagement through this chakra, which is a magnificent chakra. I'm not against it in any way. I just know that when it doesn't feel like it has to be the one in charge of my entire human experience, and it's balanced with all these other aspects, like all 7 chakras get to be in their expression, there's an ease and a grace and an aliveness and a balance and balanced internal chemistry. The dopamine and the serotonin and the oxytocin and all these things come into a much more elegant balance. And so my invitation for you is, don't make the ego bad and wrong, any more that you would make ideally a tantruming toddler wrong. I know it's hard if you're dealing with one of those regularly, but from the outside, as a calm, compassionate person, we can have a lot of compassion for a child that senses are so overwhelmed and their brain is working so hard and they have these emotions that don't make sense, and hitting the point of just being so overwhelmed that they melt down over one more little trigger, like hearing no to the cookie that they really want. And the sort of compassionate awareness that if we hold space for them, they're not a bad child because they're having a meltdown. They're just a really stressed, overwhelmed child. And how can we help them to navigate their childhood experience in a way that is easier? So parents pay a lot of attention to getting their children the right amount of sleep and the right nutrition and having language to talk about their feelings so they don't just have to scream their heads off. There's all this stuff that goes into navigating that and helping children to walk through those kind of things. And yet we forget to do that for ourselves as adults. So the invitation, when you find your ego getting really difficult and reactive and engaging in comparisons and who's better and who's worse, and these aspects that really aren't the truest reflection of your deepest values, don't make yourself bad and wrong. Don't criticize yourself. That's a symptom of this system. But create some interventions like a walk in nature or a meditation, or even putting on the window channel that's going to stream a beautiful camera set up on a beach with waves coming in. There are all these different ways that we can work with ourselves to move ourselves out of the hamster wheel of the thinking mind when it's not supporting the life that we want to be living. Because there are magnificent things that the thinking mind does that are so cool and so powerful and make for such a rich human experience, but we want it to be in service to the holistic experience we want to have, rather than trying to run the show, trying to be the sum total of our whole experience. And that's where the balance, when the ego gets inflamed and reactive, we want to help it to be soothed and cuddled and allowed to rest and bring its levels down and not be so inflamed. The most compassionate way I have to think of someone who's really doing a lot of that name dropping and virtue signaling and reactivity and trying to tell me what a good person they are, it's hard to connect with that person. I don't enjoy them. And thinking, oh, your solar plexus is really inflamed. This chakra has a lot of inflammation. It's not happy right now, is a more compassionate way to think of them, because, oh my goodness, I can so find that in myself, especially in my younger, more socially awkward years, of everything that has ever been annoying to me about someone who was in that space. I can reluctantly remember a time that I did that thing. And so there's a sweeter way to work with it than making it bad and wrong. And so I hope this gives you some opportunities and some ideas for how to really be a good person to provide adult supervision for this chakra, so it doesn't get inflamed and it doesn't run the show, but it can be the magnificent center of your expression of yourself in the world that it's originally designed to be. Thank you so much for joining me. To learn more about me and my work, please visit my website at handsoverheart.com. There you can join my mailing list for access to free bonus content in the members-only area. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. It would help me out a lot. Also, a special thank you to my patrons for your support. You offer me the time freedom to work on passion projects like this one. If you'd like to receive personal shamanic support from me and my team of guides, please consider joining my Patreon community. You'll find the link below. And again, thank you so much for listening. This is Katie Weatherup, wishing you wholeness and happiness.